Welcome back to Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe. This is your host, Joe Davis, and it is great to be back with you today. And for those joining on our Got Baseball Cards channel, you will see I'm sporting a Brooklyn Dodgers Jackie Robinson retro jersey because, yes, that's where I will be next week, only 10 miles from Brooklyn, where we will be at Javits Center for Fanatics Fest. If you're coming out to the show, which is open to the public Thursday through Sunday, we have two booths, but the technical booth number is 2747, so come and find us. I will be there with 3 other team members with a huge selection of singles. And today I'm going to be talking summer show strategies. We're talking about Fanatics Fest, we're talking about the National, we're talking West Coast Card Show, we're talking Dallas Card Show, because Fanatics Fest, West Coast Card Show, and Dallas are all the same weekend. And then, of course, the National is not far behind. So whichever of these shows you're attending, if you're attending any of them, I'm going to try to give you some strategies for buying, selling, grading, and other tips that you can use. So let's start with which ones are you going to? Are you going to any of them? I'm going to give you strategies that will work at a local show as well. I'm a veteran of many, many nationals dating back to 1990. It was my very first one. And the National always has a special place in my heart because it was at the National 1990 where I felt like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do for my career. And I didn't get to really jump into that for another year full time because I was still a college student. But the National always is a phenomenal experience, and we're going to get to that. But let's dig into some basics. For any of these shows you go to, specifically the bigger ones, Fanatics Fest will have a massive footprint. I think there's only about 250 dealers, though many of us will have multiple tables. And our card show is only a small part of the experience. And it will be at the Javits Center, of course, in New York. And that is going to be starting on the 16th. This year they've added another day to the show. It's now going to be a 4-day show. So if you're headed to Fanatics Fest, if you're headed to the National, one of the first things I can tell you, 3 really important basic things I'm going to tell you before we dig into actual show strategies, and that is comfortable shoes. I learned this the hard way several years ago at the Atlantic City National, and you can all get a laugh at my expense. Just before the National, I'm like, my tennis shoes are a little worn out. I'm going to get a new pair. I get my new pair of tennis shoes, and then the first day, which was setup day for me, all we could do was basically get our credentials. I think we just dropped our stuff off. We couldn't really set up. It's been several years, but I remember, hey, I love running on the beach. I love walking on the beach. So what did I do? I walked several miles on the beach that afternoon. By the next day, my feet were swollen. I was literally wearing flip-flops for most of the rest of the show because I knew walking on that concrete floor every day was not going to be kind to my feet. So don't go to the show in a brand new pair of shoes. Break them in first. That concrete floor in Chicago can be very painful on your feet, and I don't think we're going to have plush carpet up and down the aisles at Fanatics Fest either. So be prepared with comfortable shoes that you have broken in ahead of time. Also, stay hydrated. Any of these shows you go to where you are doing a lot of walking and there are a lot of people compressed together, you want to stay hydrated. So my 3 biggest tips: comfortable shoes along with comfortable clothing. It's not a 3-piece outfit, This is not a wear something comfortable. Comfortable shoes, comfortable clothing, stay hydrated, and bring cash. And cash is king at any of these big shows. There are many vendors, even at the National, even at Fanatics Fest, that are not full-time professional dealers, meaning they may only deal in cash at the show. You say, well, here's my credit card, and they're like, sorry, I don't take that. Now I would say most, I can't guarantee it, but I would think most dealers will take some form of electronic, whether it's PayPal or Zelle or Venmo or something like that, but don't assume that. And so I would guess, my guess, probably 80 to 90% of transactions at these major shows are done in cash. So go prepared. And one other tip I will give you, this applies to any show, and then we will dig into some actual strategies with cards. But carrying around a Zion case all show long can be really tiring. I have done most shows, I'm there as a vendor. I'm usually behind the table. I've got a chair, I can sit down, I've got places to set my stuff. But I've also walked the show floor at the National in some years when I didn't set up many years ago. And one thing I've learned that's very handy is it's great to have a Zion case, but they can get very heavy if you're carrying them. And so it's good to have one that's on wheels, or your backup strategy can be, if you have a small Zion case and you're not actively pulling cards in and out of it all the time, you can get a small, like, a carry-on size suitcase, a small one that you can drop the Zion case in, on wheels, and you can roll it around with you. You're not wearing your arm out all the time. One thing to be careful of, though, if you do that, is you don't want to go up to a table and then put that behind you, or you may not see it again. The great majority of people at a card show are fantastic. It's a fun experience, but there's always that risk. It only takes one person who is there, and every year at the National, sadly, we hear about it. Someone gets things stolen from them, and so please be careful whatever you do and however you carry your cards. But that is one suggestion, that you don't have to carry everything and wear yourself out, because, you know, 8 hours on your feet on a concrete floor, walking around in a huge crowd and trying to carry something that's heavy with you everywhere you go can be very tiring. So there's just a few practical tips for any show you go to. All right, now let's talk about strategies. And I'm going to try to give you strategies if you're going to both shows like we are. But the main thing let's focus on first is buying, because most of you aren't going there as vendors. A lot of you are, and hopefully I'll give you some ideas too, but most of you are going there to buy, right? Maybe you're going to sell, we'll get to that. But if you're just going to buy, here are some things I have learned over the years at a major show like a Fanatics Fest or any of these major shows, at Dallas or West Coast, any of those. With a show that big and that many vendors, and especially at the National with over 1,000 tables, it's, the world's biggest selection of cards in person that you'll ever find, is you can get overwhelmed really quickly, you can blow through your money really quickly, and you can get to the end of the show, whether you're there for a day or, the entire show for several days. You can get to the end of it and go, well, that was fun, and let me look at what I got. And then you're like, yeah, that's cool. And, well, that's a neat card. And then you're like, but I didn't get any of the stuff that I really planned to buy, because you can so easily get overwhelmed and get caught up in the excitement, the fear of missing out on something, that you can jump the gun so quickly that you may end up with something you didn't really go there for. And there's nothing wrong with that. I always recommend, if you're ADD like me, to the max like me, I need things to keep me grounded, to keep me focused. And so if you're going to the show, spend the time now to any of these shows. Prepare. Do your research. Make your lists. whether it's on a sheet of paper, whether it's on your phone, of if you have specific players you're looking for or specific cards of specific players. Maybe you're old school and you're going to be at our table finishing some vintage sets. Bring those lists. We are going to have tens of thousands of vintage cards from the late 40s on up in order, at least initially, before everyone gets their hands on them. So bring those lists, but I'm going to recommend the 80-20 rule. And what I mean by that is it's hard not to go to a major show and not find something that you don't expect to find that you want to spend money on. Maybe it's a box that you want to rip and you haven't seen one in years. Maybe it's, this rare parallel of Griffey or Jordan, and you're like, oh, I've been looking everywhere for one like that and never thought I'd find it, but I really want it. And maybe it's not on your main list of what you're looking for, but you want to spend money on that. So here's one way to play it, regardless of your budget. Let's say you're taking $5,000 to the show to spend. And, if you're flying in, paying for a hotel at a national, that's probably not an unreasonable expectation for some of you because you're already putting a lot into the event itself just to get there, spend time there. So let's say $5,000 is what you plan to spend at the show. So the 80-20 rule is you're going to allocate 80% of that to things you actually know you want for your collection. And the reason you do that is so at the end of the show, you can feel a sense of satisfaction that, yes, I've made progress, I have completed a set, or I have added to my player collection of my favorite player, or I've finished my old team set of, a Super Bowl champion team, and you're looking for every autograph or whatever it might be. The 80-20 rule gives you a sense of satisfaction if you carry out that 80% and you actually get some things that you actually went there to find. Now, saying that's often easier than doing it. It's always funny to me when I see every year at the National, I have someone or several people walk by our booth with T-shirts that say, buying Barry Bonds number whatever, or buying Mickey Mantle Topps 1952 Topps. I know it's really not the rookie, it's the 51 Bowman, but anyway, you know what I'm saying? And every year someone walks by, hey, I'm working on Turkey Reds, I'm working on T206, whatever it is. I'm finishing a Kaboom first year basketball set, whatever. And it's always because, hey, that's a walking advertisement. Here's what I'm trying to find, and I'm very specific about it. So they're definitely living out that rule. They're focused. They have a target of what they want to find, and they came to that show to do it. So the other 20% is, hey, we're all going to find something at a major show that we didn't expect to find, or hopefully we will. And we just want to have a little play money to buy something fun. Maybe it's to rip a box that we didn't plan to buy, whatever. But that's a strategy that might keep you focused. Have your list of what you're looking for, but hold back a little bit just for fun because you never know what you'll find. Unfortunately, I've had years in the past when I was just a shopper at a national and I ended up spending all of my money on what should have been the 20%. It's like, oh, that's cool. I remember one year I bought a pack of 61 Fleer basketball because I love that set and never planned to buy that, but it was fun. It was over really quickly and I got a bunch of commons and a really old piece of gum. But, I got the thrill of opening a 61 Fleer basketball pack. So go there with a strategy. How they recommend that. As a buyer, also do your research ahead of time. I'm not guaranteed, you can look at a card and say, oh, the last sale on eBay was $300, therefore that's what I want to pay. Hopefully you find it for that, but there's no guarantees. I sometimes, not sometimes, almost every year I hear complaints from buyers that many sellers are well above comps, at least on certain cards. And I'm going to get to the other side of that as a seller, but understand that sellers there at that show, they're not sitting in their basement on eBay listing that card. They have thousands of dollars of expense just to be there. Most of us have extreme five figures of expenses just to be there and to set up and to rent hotels and to pay for flights. We're going to have 15 team members at the National this year. And we do that because we want to have a huge presence there. We also want to have as many team members necessary to be able to serve every client that comes up to our booth, to meet with every last person we can, to assist them. That's part of our objective, part of our mission in this hobby is to serve collectors. And so we want to do that. You know, we have probably as many team members per table in our booth as anyone there. We bring a lot of help because we want to meet with as many clients as we can. We don't want anyone having to wait 30 minutes just to get to us. And so we bring a lot of team members, and we're excited for that opportunity to meet with so many of you. But understanding that on our behalf, I understand what many other dealers there go through. There's a lot of expenses. So understand some dealers might be a little over comps for one of two reasons. They're trying to recoup some of their expenses, or or they believe in that card. You know, one suggestion I'll give you, if you're a buyer, and no matter what app you might use Market Movers from our friends at Sports Card Investor. You might use Card Ladder. You might use whatever app you might have on your phone. And I highly recommend using those apps to help you know what market values are and to keep you grounded as to about what you might want to pay. But one thing I don't recommend is taking the phone and if someone has something priced and just going, well, the last comp was this, and you stick it in their face. Not the best way to negotiate. It's better to say, well, I see where some recently have sold for this. Could you get closer to that number? Because understand, when I've been approached with that before, you know, I can often say, well, that's a really good price. Someone got a really good deal, you know, but I encourage each of you, don't come in with that aggressive approach. Like any dealer there is obligated to sell at the last comp. And that's kind of a confusing point in our hobby a lot of times, where buyers will say, well, why don't you sell at the last comp? And I'm like, well, if every card always sold at the last comp, nothing would ever go up or down. But that's, you know, we're in an industry that's ever evolving, ever changing. You know, if you were at last year's National and you spent $100,000 on Otani slabs at 20% over comps, you did great because of where they're at now. So there are going to be plenty of cards there. Take your time. When it comes to negotiating as a buyer, I recommend that you spend time looking at a dealer's inventory. If you see one card you like, check and see if they have a few others. And then ask, hey, I see a few things I'm interested in. Could we work on a package deal? Understand, with PSA being shut down right now for entry-level services, there's a huge domino effect going on in the industry right now when it comes to slabs. Submitters, me, you, the rest of the globe, we can't send in more cards to PSA at the value bulk levels right now. Therefore, we cannot set ourselves up to get more and more slabs back anytime soon. Therefore, there is even more demand right now for affordable slabs, the sub $500 type slabs. There is so much demand. Repackers need those. Whatnot streamers and eBay Live streamers, they need those cheap slabs for their shows. You know, there are so many buyers out there. If you go to any of these 4 shows I just mentioned, there will be signage up all over the show buying, and sometimes it'll say buying at 80%, buying at 90%. Some buyers will literally buy over the table at 100%. And the reason is they're going to buy that card and then they're going to put it in a repack product. And so it doesn't matter to them if they paid $100 for a $100 card, because when they mix it into their repack, they're going to get 115, 130 back out of that when they do the math and create their product. So across an entire print run of a repack product. So understand when there are buyers out there at tables across the show floor paying 80, 90, 100% in some cases, it's very hard to get steep discounts on those slabs right now when you're the buyer on the other side of the table. You know, one of the hardest things for us as a retailer in the industry right now is to get quantities of quality inventory at any kind of discount. You know, we are actively buying. I will be doing more buying at Fanatics Fest and at the National this year probably than ever before, because we need inventory. As I've shared on a previous episode, I have thousands of cards out at PSA. I have large quantities at other grading companies as well, but they're all coming back in bits and pieces, not in quantities. And so specifically at Fanatics Fest, where I'll be next week, I'll actively be walking the show floor and buying to obtain more inventory to have at the National. And so I have literally been on eBay and on Fanatics Collect lately, buying inventory, buying things that I'll be reselling at the National. And so I'm sure I'll run into situations where someone will say, "Hey, I like that card. The last comp was $50," and I'll pull it up and go, "Sure was. I bought it." You know, so which is why it's going to be priced over $50. But so understand, I'm trying to help all of you to help you understand on the negotiation side. It will likely be difficult, especially if you're buying Wembanyama or you're buying Jackson Dart, or you're buying, you know, Otani, Judge, whoever, you know, vintage, you know, Jordans especially. If you're trying to buy up players who are in demand in slabs right now, don't expect significant discounts, because there is so much peer-to-peer buying right now. You know, it's not the old days of the hobby. You don't go to a big show and say, "Hey, I've got a wad of cash. I'd like to buy a lot of stuff at 50% off." That used to happen. You know, having a lot of money gave you power. Nowadays, a lot of dealers, myself included, I feel like wise investments in the right players, in the right slabs, with the right grades, that's probably a safer investment. You know, $100,000 worth of good quality slabs of good names at current market, that's probably a safer investment than cash is right now, because you're probably going to safely earn, hopefully, 5, 10, 15, 20% on those cards if you hold them for a year. So there will be a lot of buying going on at the National, but and at all of these other shows, but the greatest majority of buying might be from those behind the table, because there is such a need for good inventory right now. As I often communicate to clients at shows, "Hey, I do this every day. You know, we sell online, we sell on multiple platforms, we sell in our retail store. So we always need inventory. So I don't have to sell it at a steep discount, because I'm probably paying that or more to replace it." So that's just a word to the wise, that this year especially, buying big name quality slabs, understand, I hope for you that you find some incredible deals, but understand there is so much industry demand for slabs across the board right now, and the percentages, the margins are really tight. There's a lot of buyers out there who are paying incredibly strong because they know they can flip those on a 5%, 10%, 15% margin. So I wish every one of you the best of the best for you while you're hunting those deals, but just be prepared is what I'm trying to tell you. All right. Some of you are going there to buy. Some of you are going there to sell. Some of you are going to be bringing a Zion case full of slabs to sell or raw cards. So let me give you some strategies. If you're trying to sell, there are plenty of opportunities. As I said, there will be buyers at booths all over any of these major shows. Look for the signs. Look for ours, the National. We've got 4 booths. Check my numbers here. We're at 853, 855, 952, and 954. So we will have a very large 600 square feet. We will be buying in one corner of our booth. So you can sell to us, but there's also plenty of others that you can sell to there. And let me help you understand how to maximize your results when you are selling at a show, any of these major shows. First of all, do your research. Do not expect XYZ seller that you're selling to, I should say buyer that you're selling to. Don't expect them to do all the work for you. They might do the work, but some of them are going to be very savvy, very quick on their phone, and they might honestly tell you, hey, the last comp on this is $900. And they might be completely honest, but they might be leaving out the fact that there were 4 other comps at 1,100. So don't just assume you can do that transaction in real time and you will get a fair shake. Do your research ahead of time. Know what you feel like a reasonable comp for a card is and what you want to get out of it. Do your research. Now, understand there will be some buyers there. Again, look for the signs. There will be some buyers who might just want a quantity of slabs at a certain percentage because they're putting them into a repack product or they're putting them on their stream, whatever. And you might be able to unload a lot of stuff at one time at a flat percentage. I don't recommend it. Here's what I recommend. There are other buyers who will be at the show who will likely be paying stronger for certain players or certain types of cards, buying kabooms, buying downtowns, buying Jordan inserts, etc. You know, that's kind of our approach as a buyer at the National this year and at Fanatics Fest. I'm working on a master list for my team. Here are specific things we are buying. Here are specific players we're buying. Here are percentages that we can live within of what we want to pay. And in some cases, we'll pay really strong on certain cards or certain players because we might need them here in our retail store. We might know that we sell them really well on eBay, or we might have a specific buyer for them back here in Metro Atlanta. But we're not that company to come to and say, I just want to sell everything at a flat percentage, because there's a lot of things we're not chasing. I think there are a lot of slabs that are overinflated right now, like unproven rookies, guys who've been in the league 1 year. Their cards are inflated, whatever league you want to call, and discuss. So I'm not a strong buyer on those because I think some of them are overpriced. I'm not a strong buyer on Pokemon slabs right now at high percentages. Some are. I think, my personal opinion, I think a lot of that is overinflated right now. Some of those cards that have ridiculous pop reports where there's 30,000 tens, 40,000 tens, and some of those are still really strong. I think some of that is overinflated right now. I'm not a big buyer on those. I'm more of a sports guy in general. I do love buying vintage non-sports. I think that stuff is underpriced. I love buying vintage non-sports. But Here's my strategy if I'm your advisor. Free advice here. If you go to the National, if you go to West Coast, you go to any of these any of these shows, if you come see me at Fanatics Fest, and you've got your case full of cards you're trying to sell, shop the floor, see who's paying what. Are certain buyers paying really strong on Jordan slabs, and you happen to have a lot? Are they paying really strong on soccer slabs, and you happen to have a lot? Whatever. Focus your first sales to those individuals that are paying the most for specific cards you have. You know, when I go through a collection at a major show, unless they walk up and say, hey, I want $10,000 for this whole box. If they walk up and say, hey, pick what you're interested in, then that's what I do. I'll pick out and say, all right, I like this stack, I like this stack. What are you thinking here? You know, what do you need for this pile? And so sell specifics first that you think you can get the most out of. Then if you're trying to unload the rest, look for those booths that are just buying certain. A lot of booths may say, hey, we only need PSA slabs. Maybe you've got PSA and they'll pay you 70% across the board, or 75 or whatever, 80, I don't know. I'm not them. So I'm saying look for those, and then it's kind of, I call it pulling the cream off the top. Sell the cards that you can get the biggest percentages for, and then unload the rest elsewhere. So that's one way you can get the most out of them. Now, if we're talking raw cards, I love buying raw card collections at major shows. I love it when someone comes up and says, hey, I've got a shoebox, give me $200 or $2,000 or whatever, you know, whatever the contents of the box how it makes sense. Again, do your research here. Most buyers understand this. This is really critical. If you have some really high-end, high-dollar inserts, rookies, etc., and they're not graded, most buyers are going to assume the worst. Whether it be me, whether it be someone in another booth, they don't have time to pull out a loop and look over every corner and edge and surface in real time when you're handing them a big box of cards. So therefore, they, as the buyer, are typically going to assume these are probably not worth grading. So I'm buying them to buy them raw and resell them raw. So I often will have individuals come up with raw cards and like, well, the last 9 sold for this. And I'm like, well, that's great, but this is not a 9. It's not graded. It might be a 9, but it's not. And we can't assume that. And so I'm going to give you a strategy of how to maximize your return on some of those when we get to the grading part. But understand when you're reselling raw cards, again, do your research to know what you want, but understand the person you're selling to is probably going to operate with that assumption that, hey, you've got a $1,000 insert card, it's not graded, why didn't you grade it? And so they're going to probably assume the worst when it comes to the condition. So understand you're at a disadvantage on a big dollar card when it's not graded when you're trying to resell, because they will often assume the worst about the card. So you got a bunch you want to unload, the National Fanatics Fest, there will be buyers all over. There'll be buyers at Dallas, there's buyers at West Coast. I've done all of these shows, and so there will be plenty of buyers at all of them. All right, let's move on to grading strategies. And this is a tough one. PSA has announced they will be doing on-site grading starting at $229 a card. BGS has announced they'll be doing on-site grading starting at, I believe, $150 a card. CGC has not announced their pricing as of while I'm recording this, and I haven't heard if SGC will be doing on-site grading or not. I know they'll be there, and I haven't heard, I don't know of which other companies will be there or if they'll be offering on-site. I also have heard BGS will be offering raw card review for, I believe, $65 a card. So that's a lot of money to fork out, especially if you're talking about trying to get cards slabbed. And those price points are not like, that's not like 2 hour service, that's like multiple day service. I believe those, what I've quoted you there, I believe that's end of show service. So if you drop them off Thursday, you can pick them up hopefully by the end of the show. And then there are higher dollar services also available for quicker turnaround or for higher dollar cards. Now, if you have, and here's one thing I will recommend. If you've got Jordan rookies, if you've got multi-$1,000 cards of any type, like Jordan rookies, or higher dollar cards, Mantle rookies, whatever, and you're going to have, and you only want to use PSA, you're going to be spending hundreds of dollars or more to grade those anyway with PSA. So grading on site could be a really good option for you. You'll have to do the math, look at what it would normally cost you versus turning it in on site. But again, $229 is their entry level price for grading with PSA at the National. Now with the other companies where they're still doing entry level pricing at much cheaper rates, if you can be patient, you can submit to those other companies much more affordably than what you can do on site. So here's a service we're going to be offering, which is not a grading service. I've shared about our new pre-grade service. All the info's on GotPregrade.com. What we have decided to do this year, which we hope will help many of you, and we hope we can handle the volume we get at the price we're going to offer this at. We know a lot of you might want to use PSA for something on site, or BGS, or maybe CGC, depending on what their pricing is. So, and some of you want to know what you got before you spend those kind of amounts on the grading. So what we're going to do starting on Wednesday at our booth at the National is we're going to be offering a $30 service for next day service on our pre-grade, meaning you can drop it off on Wednesday and by end of day Thursday, you get the card back in our tamper evident sleeve with the serial number, with a pre-grade estimate, and you'll be able to go on gotpregrade.com and see what the issues with the card are. And what that will allow you to do is, first of all, it will save some of you hundreds of dollars because we're going to catch flaws that you might not have seen. And then you're like, oh, wow, I spent 30, but I didn't have to spend 150 or 229 or higher, depending on the value of the card and depending on the speed you want it back from PSA or BGS. And the other thing it will allow you to do is, instead of walking the show floor with $1,000 downtown that's not graded, and you're trying to resell it and the buyer doesn't know what the condition is and assumes the worst, as I shared earlier, you can give it to us, you get it back the next day. Maybe it's a 9, maybe it's an 8 grade estimate. And then that potential buyer you're trying to sell it to can go on our website, pull up that card with the serial number, with the condition issues, and they know exactly why our team assigned it that pre-grade estimate. So instead of them assuming it's a 6 or a 7, if it is nicer, maybe it's an 8 or a 9, or maybe it's a pre-grade estimate of a 10 if we find absolutely no flaws with the card. So for next day service, compared to everything else going on at the National, we hope that will be helpful to many, and we hope we can maintain that price throughout the show and turn things around for you. We hope we don't have to shut the service down. We hope we can we have multiple team members assigned to work on that. Of course, Doug Giles, our head of grading, will be there all week, starting on Wednesday, and he has other team members that work with him on inputting the information and getting all of the information in our system so that you can get the cards back quickly, back in your hands with the pre-grade estimate, and be able to use them to use that information, whether to resell it or to help you decide, hey, I want to go ahead and try to get this hard slabbed at the show with one of these companies. So there's a little bit of info for you on the grading. Again, PSA 229 entry, that's going to be the cheapest from what I've been told. BGS 150, CGC I don't know. Got pre-grade $30, and ours will be a 1-day turnaround, end of day by the end of the next day. So if you want to go ahead and book us for some of those, send us an email and say, hey, I'm arriving Thursday and I've got 20 cards I need done. Let's go ahead and get all your info down. We will be ready for you to process yours as quickly as possible. Understand the National last year, I think they had like 110,000 people. It only takes a tiny handful for each of these grading companies to get bogged down. A very tiny percentage, I should say, of that volume. Even at $229, PSA will probably have long lines. Hopefully not. Hopefully they've streamlined it to where they can take those in, turn them around. I hope for the very best. My goal, my hope is every submitter, no matter which company you work with, I hope you have a great experience, meaning that you get your card turned in, you get it back quickly. Hopefully you're pleased with the results. By us offering Got Pre-Grade on site, we hope to help a lot of you have an even better experience by not wasting money on grades, on cards that shouldn't have been graded in the first place, especially at those price points. And so we will also be taking drop-offs for the Got Pre-Grade service for our standard $15 service at both New York and at the National. You can drop those off for our 2-week service. You can also submit with us for PSA regular service, BGS service, whether it be subgrade, non-subgrade. You can drop off with us for SGC. You can drop off with us for CGC. We're going to be taking in submissions for all of those companies at the National for us to bring back and process on your behalf. We'll also be taking in submissions for, again, the Got Pre-Grade and for just the screening portion as well. So we will be there to help you. We will also be taking in consignments in New York. We will be taking in consignments at the National. So we will have our head of consignments, Taylor Pruitt, will be there at both shows to assist you with that. So whatever your need is when it comes to your collection, you need help with, we want to be able to serve you as well as anyone in the industry when it comes to grading and consignment or liquidation. If you're there to sell, we're there to help you with that too. So I know I've gone a little long, but there's so much to get out. And again, 4 great opportunities coming up very soon. Fanatics Fest, we will be at. Dallas Card Show, West Coast Card Show, both fantastic shows if you're in those areas. They're the same weekend as Fanatics Fest. And then in the end of July, of course, we've got the granddaddy of them all, the National, Wednesday through Sunday. So again, come and see us. 15 team members at the National to serve you. So it is going to be a fantastic month. I will probably be exhausted by the end of it, and that's okay. If I look really worn out when I do my first video in early August, you will understand why. If my voice is worn out, that's often the case too. But as much as I talk, even this voice wears out occasionally. So Hopefully, I've shared something today that will be helpful to you at whatever show you attend, whether it be any of these or whether it be a show at just a local hotel in your area. Hopefully, something I've shared will be beneficial to you. And the most beneficial thing I could share with you today is that Jesus loves you. He gave his life for you. He wants a relationship with you. Asking him into my life was the greatest, wisest, smartest decision I ever made. And so I love to share that with listeners. And remember today that I am thankful for every one of you. I think you are awesome. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. And we hope to see you at one of these shows coming up.